to CNAMB certification, Pathway to Excellence. My name is Kimberly Jones, and I am going to be your facilitator for this certification, recertification overview. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our education team here at CCI. We have Dawn Whiteside, who you see here at the top. She is our Director of Education, and Professional Development. Myself, Kimberly Jones, I'm the Manager of Education and Professional Development and the LMS Coordinator. And then we have Samantha Hendrickson. She is our Professional Development Associate. She makes sure that everything that Dawn and I and she herself do works as a team and works for all of our certificate holders. So here's our disclaimer. And as a certification organization, CCI's role is developing and administering certification exams to determine the qualifications of applicants for certification. So as such, CCI does not require or endorse any specific training materials, study guides, review products, courses. And that being said, that allows you to prepare for the certification exams using any educational materials that you want. The purchase of CCI materials is not a requirement for testing, nor does it imply successful performance on the exam. CCI does offer a variety of study resources for certification exams, including an on-demand prep course, practice exams, and a study guide. But please note that there are no study resources that are prerequisites for the certification exams. So what are our objectives for this webinar? Well, first we're going to define the value of certification and then look at the eligibility requirements for someone who wants to take the CNAMB certification. What are the components of that exam? And then what are the best strategies that we can briefly touch on for you using recommended test prep materials? We're going to look at strategies for answering those multiple choice questions and then discuss resources available to prepare for the CNAMB examination. So let's define the value of certification. On here, you will see a link to our website, as well as if you scan the QR code, it will take you directly to our CNAMB handbook. Highly recommend that you download it, save a copy, use it as a reference. It has everything certification, recertification wise in there, as well as breaks down points, everything that you would need to know. So we need to know what is the definition of certification before we really get started. And certification, as defined by the Accreditation Board of Specialty Nursing Certification, ABSNC, is the formal recognition of the specialized knowledge, skills, and experience demonstrated by the achievement of standards identified by a nursing specialty to promote optimal health outcomes. CNAMB is a voluntary certification, validates the professional achievement of standards of practice by a perioperative RN working in the ambulatory surgery setting. It is accredited by ABSNC. So what's the purpose of certification? Well, it demonstrates a commitment to accountability to the public for safe nursing practice, and with that, it enhances quality patient care. It identifies RNs who have demonstrated that professional achievement in providing perioperative nursing care in the ambulatory setting. It gives facilities, employing agencies, a means to identify the professional achievement of an individual nurse and provides personal satisfaction for the practitioners. It also contributes to your career path for perioperative nurses who work in ambulatory surgery. So what are the objectives of certification? Well, the objectives are to recognize that individual nurse who is proficient in practice. We want to strengthen the use of evidence-based theory in assessing, planning, implementing, and evaluating patient care, and then enhance professional growth through continued learning that results in greater depth of knowledge and those expanded skills. So the CNAMB certification is designed for perioperative nurses working in the ambulatory surgery setting who are seeking to improve and validate their professional competencies. The CNAMB certification assesses the knowledge and skills of a perioperative nurse with a minimum of 2 years of clinical practice in the ambulatory surgery setting. Earning the certification is a mark of distinction and recognizes that important role that nurses play in delivering that safe patient care. So our objective 2, let's look at review the eligibility requirements for this certification exam. So to earn the CNAMB credential, applicants must meet eligibility requirements at the time of application and pass a certification exam. So you have to have a current unrestricted RN license in the country or state where you're currently practicing. You need to have completed a pre-licensure degree. You'd be working full or part-time in ambulatory surgery setting. A minimum of 2 years and 2,400 hours experience as an eligible in an eligible role, okay, with a minimum of 500 hours of those in the intra-op setting. If you earned your CFPN, your Certified Foundational Perioperative Nurse, or you were a CST or a TSC, or hold the military equivalent, a minimum of 18 months and 2,400 hours of experience as a perioperative registered nurse is required. And going into that, we'll look at the application process. So applicants may apply for the CNAMB exam by creating an account or logging into their existing account on the CCI site. And this information is required, as you see here, it's a process. And so the following information that I'm going to tell you is required to complete the online application. It takes about 15-20 minutes. So if you have everything in order, it'll go smoothly. So you need to have your personal contact information, address, home, work phone number, and an email. For your email, please try to use one that you're going to use long term. It'll allow you to receive communications from CCI, and you'll always have access to it if it's a long term, and people typically think that's their personal email. With mobility of nurses and employment opportunities, people transition to other jobs. You may not always keep that same email address that you're registered with if it's a work one. So personal address, email address works great. Your email address is also going to be your login ID. So you're also going to use your legal name on your application as it appears on an original valid government issued photo ID that has a signature on it. You'll need your RN license information, which includes your license number, the state you're licensed in, and the expiration date. You'll need your perioperative work history, past 2 years, date you began working in the OR, and if that's fine, if it's been, 5 years ago, that's fine. Just the date you began working in the OR, your current position and current practice area, your employer's contact information, facility name, address, phone number, who's your supervisor and what's their contact information with name, address, phone number. And then you're going to be having a payment information. Once you do that, you'll be able to schedule your exam. Let me back up a second. Once your application is submitted and approved, then you'll be able to go in and schedule your online exam with our testing partner. There's a testing window. So on here you see you apply in 1 month, and then the following 3 months are your testing windows. So say you submit your application in December. And so that gives you January, February, and March for your testing window. You go, well, I want to wait. I'll do it in March. Well, then that gives you April, May, and June. So think about the what ifs. What if you have a person that's graduating, June weddings, vacations, things like that. So take those into consideration when you apply, because once you schedule that exam, you really are supposed to take that in that 3-month window. Information on applications may be verified. If there's any reason to believe that an applicant might not have met the eligibility requirements, or if an outside party informs CCI that an individual has not met specific requirements, the application may be flagged for audit. And in addition, there are a minimum percentage of certificate applications that are randomly selected for audit. The credentialing department will begin that audit by contacting the individual in writing to obtain documentation to substantiate the information that they submitted on their application. And that information can be verified by telephone, email, and/or a letter by the credentialing department. All information gained through the verification procedures will be kept confidential, except in instances where the law dictates or demands the disclosure of facts. Under no circumstances will the party that reported you be disclosed. Verification may include, but is not limited to, employment verification form, and that's something from a manager or supervisor or human resources, and they must complete it. A verification of your license through something like nurses, verification of professional nursing history through contact with past employers if it's needed. And the applicant, you are responsible for furnishing any information missing from the application. So should there be anything, any information that's found false, the applicant will be notified and declared ineligible to continue the certification process. If you delay submitting documents and/or submitting incomplete documentation, that may result in a shortened testing window. An email will be sent to the applicant detailing the audit results after the documents have been reviewed. So failure to comply with all audit requirements by the 30-day deadline or to successfully pass the audit will terminate your application. There's no refunds of the application fee paid back to you. There's no refunds if you don't pass the audit. So objective 3, we're going to look at the components of the CNAMB exam. So if you go onto our website, you'll see certifications, and you'll drop down and you'll say CNAMB and or certified, and you'll see CNAMB on the drop down, and you'll click it. As you scroll through that page, you'll find a lot of information pertinent to CNAMB. This is the percentage of questions that you'll see in the different subject areas or domains as related to the exam. So here you can see that a large part of your questions, 20%, will come from intraoperative care. Then that goes down to preoperative patient assessment and diagnosis at 14%, and then down to the 12%. You have 2, 10s. And if you notice, there's a couple that are like 8 and 5%. You think, oh, those will be easy. Just because they have a small percentage does not mean that they don't require the same amount of study. Okay, I just want to throw that out there because you don't know where the questions are going to come from. Task and knowledge statements. So each subject area is broken down into more specific terms. They're called task and knowledge statements that may appear on the exam. So tasks, those are what a perioperative nurse should be able to do. That's our skills required for competent practice in the ambulatory setting. And knowledge, those knowledge statements, that's what we need to know to be able to provide that competent care. So we need to think about, what do we need to know and what do we need to be able to do? And knowledge you can get through work experiences, independent learning, and even formal education programs. Questions within each subject area are written by a panel of experts, subject matter experts, SMEs. And the questions are written and triple checked for accuracy with the most up-to-date references. And these references are part of your study resources that we'll discuss in a little bit. And a job analysis is completed by CCI to ensure that the questions reflect the most accurate real-life experiences. And these subject areas are then divided into a certain percentage of questions within the entire exam. And each subject area also has required topics that you'll review in the presentations. And these topics are also called the knowledge statements. These required topics, knowledge statements, are broken down further into specific nursing practice. So that's kind of how the exam is laid out. So the exam itself consists of 200 multiple choice questions. Of that 200 questions, 185 are used to calculate your test score. The remaining 15 questions serve as pre-test questions. They don't affect your score. They are dispersed throughout the exam. You cannot identify them and from a regular question. The exam is a timed test. It needs to be completed in 3 hours and 45 minutes. And the computer that's used to take the exam will keep the official time. And the computerized format of the exam requires basic computer experience. If you elect to take your exam with the remote proctored exam option, you must do a system check with your computer prior to scheduling the exam. And then there's an optional pre-exam tutorial that'll provide instructions on how to take the exam on the computer. It'll also provide examples of selecting answers, marking questions you want to return to and review before you hit that final "I'm finished" submit. The time allotted for completing the tutorial is completely separate from the actual exam time. So when you say, I've got 3 hours and 45 minutes, take out that time. That time that you use for the tutorial is in addition to the 3 hours and 45 minutes. The scoring methodology for this certification exam is that there is one reported pass-fail decision score, and scores are determined by converting the number of questions answered correctly to a scaled score that ranges from 200 to 800. You need a total scaled score of at least 620 to pass. You should answer all the questions on the exam, because any question that you don't answer may be one that counts against the final score. So your scaled score isn't a number of questions you answer correctly or the percentage of questions you answer correctly. It's really a score that is transformed from the raw test score, and that's the number of questions answered correctly. And then the scaled score allows for consistent scoring, which is why it's used. And again, you can't tell the difference between scored and unscored questions. You can't tell the difference between true exam questions and pre-test questions. So what the exam is it's a validation of your knowledge related to current best practice. It's a reflection of ideal practice, and that ideal practice includes ideal amount of staff, the ideal time to do everything that needs to happen, room turnovers, sterilization of trays and loaners and patient issues, and then all of the resources that you would need, all the ideal, everything's in your room. You're set to go. The magic dust came out and everything just fell into place. And the exam is developed for a nurse with 2 years of experience, okay? But we're going to look at what the exam is not. It's not based on individual practice, hospital policy, or that lack of adequate resources. It's not focused on a single specialty in surgery. It's not a specific patient population or a skill set. So you have to think about what the exam is. Just because you live in the Midwest, the questions are not written just because you live in the Midwest. The questions are written for anybody anywhere in the country or wherever that takes this exam should know the answers to. Exam fees. Applications can't be processed without payment. All fees, outstanding debts to CCI must be paid in full, and those fees are non-refundable. So please check our website to find out the current pricing for the exam. And then when you go to take the test, right, you've been approved, you've got your test date, you've got all your fees paid. When you go into the testing center, make sure you're ready for heightened security measures. Kind of like going to the airport, right? Through the TSA lines. It's very limited in what you can take into the testing station. So try not to take a great big purse or your book bag or anything like that, because they have lockers that they can give you in most locations, but they're very small. So try just to take in only what you need. And then let's see, there's going to be multiple tests going on in those locations, right? Not everybody's there to take the CNAMB test on the same day. There's going to be all kinds of tests and candidates at that testing center. And so you may hear people really pounding on their keys, on their keyboards. You may hear people tapping their hands. You may have all kinds of distractions. And you can ask for headphones and scratch paper. You cannot use your own headphones or earbuds. Those are big no-nos. So they will supply the things that they will allow you to have. You can mark items in the test and go back to that item. There's a review screen option. It's not a variable exam like the NCLEX. It doesn't, if you miss a question, it doesn't give you another one very similar to it to test you and then keep building. You just don't know what you're going to get, and it's not a stackable kind of question. The scaled score will be computed at 620 out of 800, and you'll know those results of a pass or a fail prior to leaving the test center. So study strategies, that's our objective number 4, to use study strategies with the recommended prep material. So time saving. Do a self-assessment. Build on what you already know rather than starting from the beginning, right? Look at our study plan that is on the website. It's specific to CNAMB if you're on that page, and you can download it, you can print it off, you can write all over it. It's really a great way when you break it down and look at what domains are the heaviest. Look at that first. Which ones do I not know? For me, it was always sterilization when I took my exam. Because that's just wasn't my world, right? So that's where I focused a lot of my study time on. I hit the other areas until I was comfortable, but I picked out the ones that I was like, oh yeah, I got that one. I know that one. I know that one. But I'm too sure if I know this one well enough. And so I would prioritize, green, I'm pretty good to go. Say yellow, better slow down a little bit. And red, I better stop and pay attention. And kind of a stoplight measure, right? So use those task and knowledge statements that are in the study plan. And within that, it'll give you keywords, and then it'll give you references. So it's broken down really nicely. Again, those subject areas are domains to organize your study plan. And then start with the subject areas that either, number one, have the highest number of questions as you're going to see, that highest percentage, or the areas that are least familiar to you, because that's where you're going to want to dedicate your time to. And you don't want to go through all of this other and start at the beginning and then go, I don't know all this and I don't have any time left. So you really need to think about those. So recommended study period to prepare for the CNAMB exam is 3 months. And reviewing the task and knowledge statements for each subject area is going to aid you in identifying those areas of strength and possible weaknesses. And the study plan is aligned with those identified areas for each section. So use your experiences at work to gain additional knowledge and skills in somewhere that you're unfamiliar, And if you have time, your lunch break, you eat and you go sit somewhere quiet for 15 minutes. Turn off text messages, TV, email, anything like that while you're studying. Break that content up into time and bite-sized chunks. There's a study technique called the Pomodoro technique, and they recommend shutting everything off and studying for like 15 to 30 minutes at a time. If you sit and you study and you study and you study and you study, your brain gets tired. It gets a lot of information in it. And so stepping away, taking a break allows you to reset and be ready to absorb more. Look at those broad concepts and be able to apply those versus memorizing facts and figures. There are facts, there are figures, yes, but we want you to be able to apply those. Say you get a question that, which of the following represents a patient in respiratory acidosis? Are you going to be looking at their pH? Are you going to be looking at their bicarb? No, those are where you're going to need that fact, right? But what would you do for a patient exhibiting respiratory acidosis? That's your broad concept. And then practice by taking multiple choice style exams. And when you practice with exams that are out there for purchase, wherever they may be from, make sure that the references that are used are current. So let's look at strategies for answering those multiple choice questions. So with every question that you encounter on the exam, you're going to see a STEM. And the STEM is basically the question. It's going to give you all the information you need to answer that question. And that question, that STEM, can either be open-ended, where it's like you fill in the blank at the end, or it's going to be close-ended, where it's going to end with a question mark. And then there are options. There are distractors. Distractors are plausible, but they're not correct. And then we have the key, which is the correct answer. So there are always 4 options, and there's only one correct answer. The other 3 options are distractors. They're possible, but they're not correct. There are no true false. There are no multiple. There are no choose all that apply. There are no calculations requiring a calculator. There are no pictures to identify pieces, parts of. Okay? It's all multiple choice questions. Pay attention to those words, those keywords that are like first, best, most, next. We do not use except or all but in our multiple choice questions. So what kind of things do people have for test taking errors? Well, they read into the STEM. They read it and it's like their brain automatically goes, well, if it's this, then I would do this. And you start reading into it and you overthink it, right? And that comes with people who've been in the OR or in nursing for any length of time, and they use their experiences beyond that 2-year mark. So remember that the exam is based for someone who's at the 2 years. So sometimes we have to just step back and go, okay, what did I think about when I was first starting? People take too much time answering a question. Allow about a minute per question, and that's where it's really great to go in and mark that question. If you read it 2 or 3, 4 times and you go, I don't know, I keep changing my mind, mark it, go back to it. You missed that quantifier, that best, next, first kind of thing. You have a question that you change the answers to multiple questions. You go through and you're like, oh, I don't know. I think I need to change this. Oftentimes, when your first choice is usually the one that you're confident in, and it's the one that you're correct with. As you take a practice exam, a great way to do this and check yourself and build your confidence is to cover up the options before you look at them. So as you're getting ready to read the question, cover up the options. Try to answer that question just from your memory, and then see if it's one of them that you're going to have in your options. And then people expect the same questions on the exam that were on the practice exams or other prep products. And I can tell you that 1000% you will not see those questions again on the exams. So again, answering it on past experiences. I had somebody who asked me, I was a coach, and they said, why do I keep missing this? And I had them read the question and I said, why are you answering it that way? Well, because that's what we do. Well, that's not what we want to know. We want to know what should be done in the real world, in this real world where everything's perfect. Your facility practice may not be evidence-based, and that will cause you to, make an error on the exam. So that's why you need to look at those resources. Using tricks and tips. Option B, always pick the longest one or the shortest. Instead, analyze the question. What do you need to know to answer this question? If you're unfamiliar with the content, where would you go to find out more information? And why were those other options incorrect? So that's a really good thought to keep in mind as you study. So we're going to look at a couple of 3 or 4 sample questions. So patient population, which accounts for the greatest number of eye muscle procedures, is pediatric, adolescent, adult, or geriatric. And if you think about it, it's pediatric. But I'm going to guess this probably half of you would have answered geriatric, because we think of eye procedures as the population, right? Geriatrics with cataracts, with blephs, with, all of the things. But when you think about reading this question, you're looking at the eye muscle, and the eye muscle procedures, strabismus, that's the pediatric population. Reference, any of our any practice exams that you take should have the rationale as to why the correct answer is correct, and it should give you the reference that's correct. So question 2, the most effective way to evaluate a patient's comprehension of his or her upcoming surgery is to A, have the patient describe the procedure in his or her own words, witness them signing the consent form, ask yes or no questions, and document that the patient has received a patient education brochure. So the correct option would be to have the patient describe the procedure in their own words. It really tells you that they understand. It may be in very simple terms, but they need to be able to do that. Witnessing is not going to be able to evaluate their comprehension, and asking yes or no questions isn't going to tell you that they understand, okay? Perioperative nurse discovers a sponge is missing during the closing count for a left lung lobectomy. And the perioperative nurse's first action would be to, what would you do? There's a key word in here, but we're going to look at, do we want to repeat the count? Do we want to notify the surgeon? Do we document the count as incorrect, or do we notify the supervisor? Which option would you choose? And what we do first is we notify the surgeon. Now, typically, if you think about it, you're going to go, well, we're repeating the count. And the surgeon at the same time, we're going like, hey, doc, we need to repeat the count. So we kind of tend to, that's where people kind of get into the weeds a little bit and overthink it. But the first thing that you should do is notify the surgeon. And now resources available to prepare for the exam. So questions on the exam are based on current national standards of perioperative nursing practice, professional guidelines, evidence-based practice, and universally accessible information. There's no single resource that's going to meet all your learning needs. We have, say, drains. That's a post-op book, right? It covers pre-op, it covers things, but it's more thought of as a recovery book. But it's not going to cover everything that you need to know, all of the regulations or the current standards that need to be met. So here are some resources that questions are pulled from. And these texts are primary resources for the CNAMB exam. And so we have the guidelines for perioperative practice from ARN. Always try to use the current edition. They update frequently. Berry and Cohn's operating room technique. We have Alexander's care of the patient in surgery, and then Drain's peri-anesthesia nursing. So those are highly recommended resources. Then optional ones. So a pathophysiology book, a dictionary, just because there may be a term that you're not familiar with, right? Lab diagnostic text reference materials. There are tests that they use to determine things, and yet we don't always hear those, right? We just kind of know what it does and what it gives us, but you have to be able to associate those. Anatomy coloring books, if you're not familiar with where things are anatomically, you may want to look at one, say the around the gallbladder, right? And you have to think about the cystic artery, the cystic duct, all of those things when they're doing a laparoscopic cholecystectomy. Use the ARN journal. It's got great resources in it, CE articles, AAMI standards. That's where your sterile processing friends are going to come into play. They have those, or should have access to them. So call on them. Say, hey, can I come down? Can you talk me through this? Why is this read this way? They're going to be a huge resource for that section of the exam for you. And then a drug reference material. Epocrates, it's got an app that you can download on your phone. That's great as you're going in to talk to patients and do your med reconciliations or teaching, and they're on something that you don't know of. What is it going to do? What do I need to think about with this patient while they're in the operative setting? And then your personal practice resources, right? Your clinical settings got anesthesia, you've got sterile processing, you've got PACU, radiology, pathology, ICU nurses. Talk to them. What do they do when they get a post-op patient? Because even though you're ambulatory, you may have a patient that just goes downhill and you need to know what to do, right? Risk management, your surgeons, wound care nurses. There's so many resources just in your clinical setting to draw from. And then there's free study aids on the CCI website. So we have the CNAMB study plan, which I've mentioned. There's a readiness to test survey. There are sample CNAMB exam questions. There are certification coaches. There is the CCI staff. And then there are webinars. Additional online resources, you can reach out to CCI at www.cc-institute.org and contact us from there. There's ARN, OR NurseLink and Specialty Assemblies. There's the Joint Commission, the World Health Organization, MHouse. That's the Malignant Hyperthermia Association of the United States. They are the gurus for malignant hyperthermia, and AORN guidelines use them as a primary resource for malignant hyperthermia. Some safe surgery patient safety toolkits out there, one from AHRQ, the other one for Council on Surgical and Perioperative Safety. And then we have, of course, the CDC. So again, I need to remind you that our exam prep product disclaimer that we don't recommend, or I should say require or endorse any specific study guides, review products, or training courses. You can choose whatever you want. We're just giving you options that we know we have available. And just because you purchase them doesn't mean that you're going to be guaranteed or that it's going to imply that you're going to pass. We have the Pocket Prep app that you can purchase or download, and then again, the on-demand prep courses. So any questions about certification, you can reach out to info@cc-institute.org, and they will direct your questions to either education or the credentialing body department that can help with questions. So now we're going to jump into CNAMB recertification. What do you need to know, right? So the rapid rate of change in the perioperative setting requires a conscious effort to maintain competency. And when you recertify your CNAMB credential, you demonstrate that continued dedication to perioperative excellence, an ongoing commitment to specialized knowledge, and a personal commitment to patient safety. Recertification of the credential recognizes the professional achievement of a certified nurse who chooses to maintain proficiency in the ambulatory role in the perioperative setting. All activities undertaken in the certification renewal process are designed to enhance the knowledge of the CNAMB certificate and improve that nurse's ability to function in the perioperative setting. So objectives, we're going to look at those eligibility requirements for recertification and the method to recertify your CNAMB credential. What are the steps in that recertification application process? And then what do I have additional options for managing the CNAMB credential? So eligibility requirements. Again, here is on this slide our website link. And then there's, if you scan the QR code, it will take you to the CNAMB Candidate Handbook. It discusses certification, it discusses recertification, it's got a wealth of information. Highly recommend you look at it. So CCI must ensure it meets current and evolving standards established by the accrediting organizations for the CNAMB credential. The purpose of ensuring competency includes protecting the public, helping to advance nursing profession, and ensure the integrity of professional nursing. Continued competence is defined as the specified levels of knowledge, skills, or abilities, not only at the time of initial certification, but also throughout the nurse's professional career. Continued competence is an integral component of professional development. So CNAMB recertification applicants need to meet the following eligibility requirements at the time of their application. They have to have a current active CNAMB credential. They have to have a current unrestricted RN license, currently working full or part-time employment in an ambulatory surgery setting with a minimum of 500 hours per year in an eligible role in the perioperative setting. So this is a total of 1,500 hours during your 3-year accrual cycle. Once you hold the CNAMB credential, there's no requirement for hours worked in intraoperative care. The employment setting can be hospital-based, freestanding, physician-owned, and the role can be clinical, administrative, educational, or research. Let's see, what else? Self-reflection forms are voluntary. Those are available to those who'd like to complete them to assist with your personal goals during your recertification. And then again, applications go through an audit, right, to make sure that you qualify to renew your certification. And there is a fee, and it is non-refundable if you fail your audit. So options. At the end of your 3-year cycle, you can apply for recertification by either professional points, which is 200 points, or you would file for an extension year or retire your credential, which is the emeritus status. You cannot reapply for certification, or you can't apply for recertification until January 1 of your recertification year. So what that means, and it's an easy way to do this, is your accrual period is the time period in which you have to complete the recertification activities. It begins on January 1 of the year you became certified or recertified and continues through December 31 of the 3rd calendar year. So if you go here, and this comes from our website, it's a great tool. It's on there, so you can plug in and say, hey, I last recertified in 2023. So I had 2023, 24, and 25 to get my points or everything in, right? My recert year, January 1st of 2026, I can pay and recert. If I restarted in 24, I have 24, 25, 26 to accumulate my points and get everything accrued. And then I recert in 27. It gets a little confusing, so this tool really helps people keep track of where they are and when they need to do their recertification stuff. Fees for recertification are subject to change without notice. So always check the website for the current pricing. Applications cannot be processed without that payment. Any outstanding fees or debts that you owe CCI have to be paid by December 31st of your recert year. So objective 2, what method can I use to recertify? So here are the steps, right? Kind of similar to the application steps if you look at it. And so you're going to confirm your eligibility for recertification. And then you're going to meet those professional activity requirements during your accrual period. You're going to go in and you're going to confirm in your account that you've hit the magic number, right? You've got 200, or if you're an overachiever, over 200. And then you're going to begin that next year certification or recertification cycle. So it's great when you have your certification, you hit your first research cycle, you complete it, start working on your next one. That way you're not under a crunch. It also allows you to stay active in your account and in your classroom so that if there's something new and you go, wow, this would be kind of cool, let me do this, then you know it's there and you can, right? Certification is recognized for 3 years, with recertification required to retain that credential at the conclusion of the period. And the required CNAMB recertification activities align with the task and knowledge statements of the most current job analysis. So recertification requirements guide professional development activities to provide parameters for acceptable practice and to maintain a link to the most current body of knowledge. So that goes back into check your classroom, check our website frequently, right? So you can get things and stay current. Correlating the certification period with the job analysis cycle ensures that certificates are engaged in activities pertinent to their professional development. And so CCI conducts that CNAMB job analysis every 3 or 5 years as required to maintain accreditation to ensure that the certification program reflects that current best practices. The recertification process acknowledges the need for active work to maintain continued competency and the practice and professional activity requirements facilitate the maintenance of current skills and the acquisition of new ones through exposure to practice setting and planned, purposeful learning activities guided by reflective learning. So again, 200 points are required. So if you go into our store, you'll see in our website, you'll see all of these points activities that are available. Several are free. They have varying amounts of points that you can accumulate in each category. So you need to, that CNAMB handbook that I discussed earlier, review that. Find out what you can do. Academic study is unlimited. Case studies, they're not a research paper like you would write in school. It's not a professional paper, so you can take a breath. They're a great way to earn 50 points apiece. You do 2 of those, which is the maximum, and you've got 100 points. You're halfway done with two assignments, right? So there are reflections, there are crossword puzzles, there are webinars and podcasts that you can listen to and then take an exam on. And you get those points, and it really doesn't take long. You get points for having your, say, your CPR, for being on a committee. You just have to have a documentation in case you're audited as you get, submit everything. So the recertification application process. So you're going to go to the website, you're going to log in. If you don't remember your username or your password, you click on the forgot password link. Give it time. If you don't hear from somebody through the work week and you're like, I need to get in here, I've got 5 days to do nothing, I can get this done, right? Don't make another account. Pick up the phone, shoot an email to info@cc-institute.org and say, I need my password reset. I can't get into my account. If you make another account, your history that's in your first one will not merge automatically with your second one. So you don't want to lose all of that information because you may have points already in there for your cert cycle, right? So here's what the website looks like if you haven't seen it lately. Up here at the top is where you're going to go in, and then you're going to log in with your email. Okay, so it's good practice to have used your long-term email address. Again, don't create those multiple accounts. And then you're going to click on My CNAMB. This one says My CNOR on the slide, but that's because that's the account, one of ours that we were able to access. So it's going to say My CNAMB. You're going to click on that. And then you're going to see what I like to say is a racetrack, right? You're going to see your accrual period. So this one's somebody's, one of our staff's CNOR recertification. And so their accrual period was from 2020 to the end of 2024. And so they were able to recert in 2025. So, okay, I'm good to go. I'm still in my accrual period, and I'm going to click on this continuing education, right? If you see something with a thumb on it, it means you're good. You've met the requirements. But if it's not got anything yet, it's like the yellow, then it's like, I still have things to do. So you're going to be logging your points. Anything that comes from our store should automatically carry over and automatically load and log in for you. You don't have to do that. Activities enabled have certificates that you can print off if you need them. Each contact hour. So say you go to a conference and you get 10 contact hours. That's 2 points a contact hour. So if you got 10, you've got 20 points that you can put in there, right? So 50 contact hours is the maximum that you can upload into your account, and that's 100 points. So if you have 50 contact hours and you do 2 case studies, 200 points, done, right? You've met it. Just make sure that you have your certificates for anything to support your contact hours. So here's an example of points that were added to an account. And the first 2, they were added by the nurse. And doing this requires the information be added, like the committee name, your role, the length of time on the committee. Other points here, like where it says games, will show they were automatically added from your classroom. And those are things that are free in our bookstore or our store. They're not required to use our activities, but they are a free option. There are NCPD continuing education courses in there that, offer CE as well. Every nurse has the option of importing their contact hours from AORN website. There used to be a button that you could import your information in from AORN. That button became inactive in May. So you have to manually load your AORN stuff. So here you can look at your continuing education and see where you're at with it. What have you reported? What's the max? You'll also find the information of the maximum in the handbook. So tips for success. Review your professional accomplishments. Make a recertification plan. Submit your application before your certification lapses. For the 2026 recertifications, you don't have to have entered all of your points by December 31st. You just need to have earned them. Okay, so you may think you have everything done and you wait to enter your points after the end of the year, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough. I've missed something somewhere. And then you're kind of at mercy, right? So it's really best practice to think about putting your activities, making sure that you keep current on what your points are so you don't get down to that, oh my goodness, what am I going to do now thought. Just have it done, and then you don't have to worry about it and can celebrate at the end of the year. And then share information about your recertification with your colleagues. There are digital badges that are available for a small purchase that you can add to your signature line that you can post on your social media. And it basically connects to the requirements. It's a digital way for people to see what did you have to do to earn that credential. So audit process, there's random audits of applications, and all of that information is verified by phone, email, letter, through employees. CCI randomly selects a percentage of recert applications for audit. And if there's a reason to believe there's been a breach in the integrity of the process by an individual seeking recertification, CCI may also select those individuals for audit. Applicants selected for audit will be notified by CCI and required to submit additional documentation within a 30-day time period. And after reviewing the documents, then an email will be sent to the applicant detailing the audit results. Delay in submission of documentation or submission of incomplete documentation can result in a delay in the process. So in the handbook, there's an outline of specific requirements for an application under audit, and failure to comply with the recert audit means that you don't pass the audit and it will terminate your application. So there's no refund of recertification fees if you do not successfully pass the audit. So keep all of your documentation, keep all of your certificates. If you're on a committee, get that information, either on letterhead, find out what is required to be, and get the signatures needed at the time of the committee work. Keep it on file, because if you say, hey, I did this committee, and we say, well, we heard you weren't really there, then you can, get that and save it and submit it for your audit. If you keep it on your computer, you risk the chance that your computer can crash. So consider emailing the document to yourself and keeping a folder in your email that says CNAMB recert information, right? And just email it to yourself and put it in that folder. And that way, if your computer crashes, you can always get into your email. You can also do things like have a Dropbox that you can access and store your stuff in. So those are good options from past experiences with education. And again, there are no refunds on failed audits. So additional options for managing your CNAMB credential. So there's an extension year. And that option is for active CNAMBs unable to complete professional activities during the accrual period, whether it's a life event, whether it's just I couldn't get it done. I was too busy. I was doing this and this and this, and I need an extension. And it allows you to complete professional activities during the accrual period that you didn't meet that requirement, and you apply for a 1-year extension that'll allow you an additional year to complete activities. There is a fee associated with that. So you need to take a look at that and decide, can I just, some people say it's December and I'm not going to get everything done. Before you pull that trigger, reach out and let's talk through with either education or the credentialing department to see what we can help guide you. Because it's extra money that you would have to pay. But it does give you an additional year to earn your points. It's only available once every 2 recertification cycles. So that's once every 6 years. So if you're a procrastinator and you want to say, oh, you got it I did it this time, so I'll do it the next time, and the next time, it doesn't work that way. So it's once every 2 research cycles or once every 6 years that you can do this. You have to apply in the year you're due to recertify. And during that extension year, you are allowed to continue using your credential. So check your website our website for the current recertification fees. And then there's the emeritus status. And that's when you get to be like this little heart and hat and sit in the sun and relax. You retire the credential. It's a one-time online application. There is a fee, but it is a one-time fee. And then you're allowed to use the CNAMB with the E in parentheses after forever and ever. You have to apply for that while your credential is active. And the only way, so say you retire and you go, I'm never working again. And 6 months later you go, oh man, I really miss it. I need to go back to work. And they say, well, you have to have your CNAMB. You have to have your certification. The only way you can get that certification active again is to retake the test. So make sure that when you retire your credential, that's it, you're done. You don't need that anymore. And you can retire it and then, use the CNAMB E at the end. Any questions? Reach out to our credentialing experts with individual questions related to recertification. And that email address is info@cc-institute.org. I want to thank you guys for your time. Again, any questions, feel free to reach out and have a good day.